What I'm about to do is dangerous. It shouldn't be attempted by novice drafters. This stunt is performed by a trained best ball professional, and I'm begging you not to try this at home. With that said, I recently started a draft with 4 straight running backs, and I had to do ungodly things in rounds 2 and 4 to make it happen, and even more horrific things to try and recover at wide receiver. My name's Peter Overzet, and this is a robust RB draft. I am going to start my draft with 4 straight running backs. I have not done this in a big board draft yet to date. I think I only did it once in all of Best Ball Mania 4. It is not my preferred drafting strategy. I think the current meta in these drafts right now is 0 RB. And I have drafted many 0 RB, maybe some anchor RB teams. I'll take CMC, I'll take, some Devon Achane, some Jahmyr Gibbs. But for the most part, I have been hammering wide receivers, quarterbacks, and tight ends through 5 rounds. But I said, you know what, Pete? I need to accept a challenge. I need to see what happens if I push myself outside of my comfort zone and draft 4 straight running backs. Can we salvage it? Can we make it work? I just hopped in a big board draft here, and I am going to give you my thoughts as I start with 4 straight running backs and seeing if we can actually build a team that we like. Let's see how we can navigate this. We did get our draft slot. We are going to be drafting from the 1-6 here. And the worst thing that could happen here is if both Bijan and Brees go. That's the worst thing. As long as one of those guys is there for me, I'll be fine. I assume Jamar Chase will be one of these 2 picks, though. That'd be pretty devastating. I think I need to just toggle off of wide receiver altogether. Oh God, Bijan goes. Please do not take Brees, JW. Please take Jamar Chase. This is going, okay, thank God. That would have been very gross to have to take Jahmyr Gibbs at 1-6. But we do get Brees Hall, who by both, I guess by my rank is ahead. By ADP, he's slightly behind Justin Jefferson. But Brees Hall, still a very comfy click here at 1-6. Normally, I'm the one sweating, hoping these wide receivers don't get selected and that people are taking running backs to push the wide receivers down to me. And today is the opposite. I am rooting for wide receiver picks. Please leave me one of those 3 running backs. I do not want to take Josh Jacobs in the 2nd round. That's where, oh no. Barkley goes at 14. So now we only have 2 more options for a running back before we're forced to take Josh Jacobs in the middle of the 2nd. Jonathan Taylor goes off the board here as well. So Devon Achane is my last line of defense before I'm forced to take Josh Jacobs. I need these 2 drafters to go wide receiver. Does this drafter go Achane or Adams? I do feel pretty confident Drake London. Fuck. I hate this already. Achane goes. Oh my God. Look at the top of the board, sorted by rank or ADP. It's all yellow. All yellow. Who agreed to this? Please, no one. Someone's gonna message me about this. Why are you taking Josh Jacobs 9 picks ahead of ADP? I'm now second guessing what's optimal for this challenge. Maybe it's having like the 10 slot. So you grab like Jahmyr Gibbs, you get one of JT or Devon Achane, and then if you miss out on Josh Jacobs at pick 34, you take Derrick Henry. I think we can get back on the right track if we can get one of Derrick Henry or ETN here. I do really think Joe Mixon will be drafted here eventually. And Rachaad White goes. So now I am just deciding between Mixon and Pacheco. And ADP is just like 1 spot ahead. So this doesn't feel great, taking a running back with an ADP of 56 at 43. But there it is, folks. We have taken 4 straight running backs. Brees Hall, Josh Jacobs, Derrick Henry, and Joe Mixon. And this is where the real challenge begins. This is when we really see, can we pull this off? I'm hoping for Christian Kirk here. Christian Kirk as my wide receiver 1. Same strategy as Jacksonville. All right. Amari goes, so I get Christian Kirk. That feels fine as my first wide receiver. Let the recovery begin. It's time to heal. It's time to piss yellow. All right. Jaden Reed and Marquise Brown go. I knew that was a pipe dream, but I still held on to it for just a brief second. I would take Terry McLaurin if he's there. I doubt he will be. Chris Godwin's further down. Hopkins, I don't want to take Hopkins here. If I could get Hopkins coming back in the 7th at 78, that would feel good. The other thing I have to really think about, right, is going both 3 quarterback and 3 tight end can be hard. There's not a lot of late quarterback and late tight end options. There's more late quarterback options. It's a little easier to go late round quarterback. And I am going to want to stack. So, I mean, Trevor Lawrence already jumps out. I think we go Brian Thomas Jr. I think we start to really bake in some upside because I think we'll be able to get a veteran in the next round. The hope is we can get one of Godwin, Evans, Addison, Deontay Johnson in the worst case scenario. We basically just want to get one more of these guys before we get to this Christian Watson tier. And then what I'm thinking is, can I potentially sidestep what to me is a very gross range from Christian Watson to the Curtis Samuel? I could have maybe made the case for taking Kittle there, but again, having one wide receiver through 6 rounds just feels like a death sentence. We're going to get a wide receiver past ADP most likely. Addison's hanging around. Godwin, Hopkins, JSN. We're going to get one of these guys. So Deontay Johnson goes. I'm just going to take the guy with the lower ADP here. Hopkins is nice too in that, he provides access to Levis. But with Godwin, I get access to Baker as well. And I've drafted so much nuke. We are going to take Chris Godwin. So if we just use process of elimination for this pick at 91, we can't pick a running back. There's no quarterbacks here. That makes sense. So that leaves us with wide receivers and tight ends. If I look at ADP, it is AD Mitchell, Njoku, and Jake Ferguson. I kind of think I like grabbing a tight end here. I'm seeing if there's any tiebreakers with Cleveland or Dallas. I'm gonna trust Pat's ranks here. I don't have a ton of Jake Ferguson. That is just an instance of not wanting to have to really reach out wide receiver, not wanting to have a team just all rookie wide receivers, because a lot of these guys might be slow to start. I feel decently cozy. He grabs Zach Moss. Yeah, we're gonna go Lockett over Sutton. Again, I know who I could stack Lockett with. Can't say the same for Sutton. Getting some veterans on this team, Christian Kirk, Godwin, Lockett. And now we can start to think about packing it with some more rookie upside here, late at least. I will take Jameson Williams if he's here at 115. I think getting, a 16 pick ADP discount on him for a wide receiver needy team makes a ton of sense. If JMO goes, I think I will take Trevor Lawrence and then wait to grab my next wide receiver in the 11th. I think that's my plan. If we miss out on Lawrence, say we are circling like Baker, Geno, I think we could do something like Jaden, Baker, Geno, something like that. I think we grab Jameson Williams. The other nice thing about taking Jameson is Jared Goff is also on the board. So now this gives us another quarterback that we could potentially take. All right, Dotson goes. So I'm going to get one of these guys. Beautiful. And I get my pick here. Let's just do the double value hound. We get Goff and JMO here, both well past ADP. Goff 10 picks past ADP, JMO 16 picks past ADP. That feels good. I'm going to put Keon Coleman and Wicks. I think we're going to take one of those two, Coleman or Wicks. Coleman has the higher ADP. So Michael Wilson goes. Just want to make sure. Yeah, Coleman top of Pat's ranks, second on ADP. I guess with Judy, you could have Watson as a potential another stack. I said I was going to break ties in favor of that. You know what? I'm going to finally commit to what I was saying. Let's grab Jerry Judy and keep building ourselves outs here for additional quarterbacks. This wide receiver room feels like the island of misfit toys. I will admit it has not been as disastrous as I thought it was going to be. I still kind of like this idea of doing the Baker and Kate Otten moves here. That we're coming up on where those picks are directly correlated with my pick number and their ADP. I pick at 150. Baker has a ADP of 150.4. I do just like the idea of getting to build out a double stack here. Yeah, I'm gonna do Baker. I want to commit to this plan here. So we now got our second quarterback, Goff and Mayfield. Now we can see, like, is there a chance we get a really big ADP value on one of these other guys? Do we do Geno? Kate Otten goes, seriously, bro? Seriously? Fuck. All right. We can still do Noah Fant in a third upside tight end, like a Likely or a Jatavian Sanders. Not the end of the world, just not ideal. That is a real thing. Drake May finally goes at 161. Then Deshaun Watson goes. I think this is a time to get get these running backs off my screen. I think this is a time to get a Roman Wilson. Let's finally swing back, get some rookie upside in here. Should be a day 2 pick. Could certainly bank a really nice landing spot. We're going to snap take Geno here. That plan goes to fruition. So we're now done at running back. Don't need any Breece Hall, Josh Jacobs, Derrick Henry, Joe Mixon assurance. We're good there. And we're done at quarterback. Jared Goff, Baker Mayfield, Geno Smith. We got them all stacked up. And now we are just wide receivers and tight ends. So we're in the 15th round. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more picks. 2 of those are going to be tight ends. I do think this is a 3 tight end team at this point. And 3 of them will be wide receivers. So that'll get us to a 3, 4, 10, 3 build. I think that makes sense. I will admit I was pretty scared when I had to take Josh Jacobs in the second, but I think we've recovered okay. Is it my favorite team I've ever drafted? Absolutely not. So I think this pick is either Jawan Johnson or one of these rookie wide receivers. Jawan Johnson falls. I feel like I need to take him. As much as I want to grab, Devontae Walker, who Sean just hyped up, grab a guy like Jermaine Burton, who JJ was hyping up the other night on ship chasing. I think Jawan Johnson is a solid tight end pick here. I'm feeling good. I'm honestly feeling good. We only have one more tight end selection to make, and then we just grab rookie wide receivers with upside. We'll see what JW does. He had the true 0 RB build going. He might be done at wide receiver, but he's got 3 tight ends. I could see him taking Jermaine Burton. All right, he goes Zeke. God bless America. All right, let's get Jermaine. Let's get some more rookie upside here. So we have, a decent amount of veteran wide receivers, but we now Parrott, Brian Thomas, Roman Wilson, Jermaine Burton. Doesn't feel too bad. Yeah, I think we'll go Sanders or Kraft here, and then we'll take two more wide receivers to land the plane. Sounds like a plan. Yeah, let's do Jatavian. I think that Jawan pick allowed me to take a pretty big high upside swing. Trey Palmer, Greg Dortch. In a vacuum, definitely like Greg Dortch more, but this seems like an obvious spot to break a tie in favor of stacking. So we grab Trey Palmer here. One more pick. Now got Baker double stacked. All right, I need to decide who is going to be this last pick, though. Greg Dortch still kicking around. I'm taking Greg Dortch if he's here. I'm telling you that right now. I'm doing it. All right, Greg Dortch. We finished it. I don't love it, but I don't hate it. Don't try this at home, kids. Overviewing how this team looks. 3 quarterbacks, Jared Goff, Baker Mayfield, Geno Smith. We, of course, have the controversial 4 running backs, Breece Hall, Josh Jacobs, Derrick Henry, and Joe Mixon. The wide receivers, Christian Kirk, Brian Thomas Jr., Chris Godwin, Tyler Lockett, Jamison Williams, Jerry Jeudy, Roman Wilson, Jermaine Burton, Trey Palmer, Greg Dortch, and then 3 tight ends, Jake Ferguson, Jawan Johnson, and Jatavian Sanders. The main thing I think about from a viability standpoint is how you're allocating your draft capital. And the thing that always sticks in my head is quantity or quality, not both. So in doing this hyperfragile draft or robust RB draft, whatever the hell you want to call it, I spent high quality picks on the running back position, which meant I couldn't have a large quantity, partly because that was the challenge, but also because I've already made my bet. I need these 4 running backs to hit, and I've already spent premium capital on there. Now I have to devote quantity to the other positions. And I feel like I did that. 3 quarterbacks. I wasn't able to get an elite quarterback, so I needed to get 3, make up for the lack of elite quarterback with quantity. Same with tight ends. Couldn't get an elite tight end because I was having to catch up at wide receiver. I end up taking 3 tight ends there, quantity, not quality. And then same for wide receiver. I only was able to get 3 wide receivers in the first 100 picks, which is definitely, I don't think optimal in the current underdog landscape. But again, I made up for that lack of quality with quantity, getting to 10 wide receivers, a very nice mix of profiles, some veterans like Godwin and Lockett and Kirk and Judy, but also some really high upside rookies there in Roman Wilson and Jermaine Burton and Brian Thomas Jr. So when I think about how I allocated my draft capital, I think I handled it well. You are making a very simple, clean bet when you do this. You are saying these 4 running backs are going to be 4 of the top 15 to 20 running backs on the season, if not higher. Like Breece Hall, I need him to be the RB1. Josh Jacobs, I need him to be a top 5 RB. Derrick Henry, I need him to be a top 10 RB. Joe Mixon, I need him to be a top 10 running back. That's the bet you're making. And you're saying if these picks hit because you draft like you're right, and these are my most important picks, that's what this all comes down to. You know, if these guys get injured, if they bust, this team is dead on arrival. In the same way, if you start with 5 straight wide receivers and 3 of them get injured and 2 bust, that team is dead on arrival. I mean, so much of tournament winning upside is what these early picks can do. We can find spike weeks. Yes, there's league winners year after year in the late rounds, but that's not a bankable thing. The top performers that you see going off in the fantasy playoffs, CeeDee Lamb and Amon-Ra St. Brown last year. A couple years ago, it was Jamar Chase going for 50. It is these superstars at the top of the board. On this team, my superstars are running backs, and that is a fragile thing by, just the nature of the position. It is so easy to draft on autopilot, right? It's so easy to just go through the motions. You either have your ranks or you're using ADP, you have the style of builds you like. And I think the autopilot becomes harder and harder to turn off the more drafts you do. You know where the sweet spots of the draft are. And outside of like, oh, this guy fell, or oh, yeah, I need to complete this stack, for the most part, you can navigate drafts in the same way over and over if you're not careful. So I think doing extreme exercises like this is actually a good way to almost shake yourself out of that autopilot robot mode. One thing I might be open to is starting with, say, 3 running backs, or doing 2 running backs and then grabbing Joe Mixon in the 5th and Kenneth Walker in the 6th. Can I get the same benefits of a hyper fragile or early robust team while understanding the context of the board and ADP more? One of the biggest hacks for drafting teams is, can you get the structural benefits but bend the rules? So another example would be anchor RB. Most people associate that with taking a round 1 running back, round 2 running back, and then you wait and you get that second running back much later in the draft. What if you get that anchor running back in the 5th round? It looks like a 0 RB team, but if you draft that as if it's an anchor RB team, that means you have to draft less quantity of running backs. It's going to be a 5 running back team. It's just that anchor running back came in the 5th round. Well, now all of a sudden, if you're correct on that premise, you essentially freed up an extra roster spot in the early rounds. Most anchor RB builds will come from picks in rounds 1 and 2. So taking structure and bending that, I think that's such a cool and game theory optimal thing you can do. And doing an extreme version of this draft kind of opens you up to those possibilities. One thing I think about a lot is the texture of my team. If I were to draft a bunch of guys who were injured to start the season, and I was saying these guys are going to help me out at the end, say I drafted Nick Chubb and TJ Hawkinson and Keaton Mitchell. Well, guess what? I'm going to need to get some veterans who are going to give me production out of the gate. I couldn't also take a ton of rookies with those injured guys, because then I'm going to have a ton of zeros at the start of the season. And I'm thinking through that dynamic constantly when I'm drafting teams. This team should theoretically get out to a fast start. I am theoretically going to have 3 of my running back scores in my lineup each week, 2 at the running back position, 1 at the flex. These guys are going to give me a high floor and high ceiling, hopefully. This means that I can be a little more loose with taking upside swings at wide receiver, because the majority of my high-end points are going to come from these running backs. So I do want to embrace taking some high upside rookies, thinking through having a balance of those rookies and veterans and understanding what a specific team needs is very important. I really like elite quarterback and elite tight end in these early drafts. I think the tight ends are really mispriced at the top. I think there's lots of nice values on the quarterbacks. I like them, from, basically from like Lamar all the way to Kyler. Like there's some nice picks there. I could not have that as part of this team. I consider those luxury picks. Last year, I used to call those detours, where wide receivers are the highway, and then you can make a few of these detours. Well, guess what? I made 4 detours for running backs early, which means I did not have enough gas in the tank to be able to make a pit stop for an elite quarterback and elite tight end. And so, as long as I kept that front of mind and didn't get distracted by some of those other things, and no, you got to hammer wide receiver, you got to hammer wide receiver, I think I was ultimately able to recover in at least a viable way. I think the key decision points for me, it was simple at the beginning, right? It was you're starting 4 straight running backs, and then you need to make up wide receiver. I think the key decision points were, when do you go away from wide receiver? Because I am going to need to get quarterbacks and tight ends. And one thing that happens in these early big board drafts specifically is the late round quarterback options are insanely gross and the late round tight end options are insanely gross. And this is unique to the big board because you think back to Best Ball Mania, think about all of the late round quarterbacks we had last year. I mean, you could take the rookies, CJ Stroud, Bryce Young, Sam Howell was there, Brock Purdy was there, Jordan Love was there. There were all these late round QBs. Same with late round tight ends. All of those rookie tight ends. Sam Laporta was cheap. Musgrave was cheap. You had all of these guys, both the Patriots tight ends. There were comfy clicks that felt good. In the big board, that does not exist. So the decision point to me was, I know I have to make up at wide receiver, and yet I don't want to be stuck taking my QB3 and my tight end 3 at the end of the draft. So I did make that detour for Jake Ferguson at pick 91 because that was a really flat part of the board for me at wide receiver. I knew coming after this, there were going to be a lot more picks I'd like. And then same with Jared Goff and Baker Mayfield. I knew I couldn't push quarterback too much further. And I think one of the things that I did that set me up well is I made sure that I was selecting some wide receivers that I knew had late quarterbacks. Christian Kirk, it's like, okay, Trevor Lawrence has a pretty cheap price tag. Chris Godwin, Baker Mayfield's really cheap. Tyler Lockett, Geno Smith is extremely cheap. So I think some of those key decision points, I maybe made some picks to help me accomplish other initiatives, which are stacking. And we know how important that is, while also kind of coloring in the lines of this structure that I had basically backed myself into. I don't feel like there was many things I regretted because positionally, I knew what I had to do, which was recover at wide receiver. And I knew I had to get some mid-round tight end and mid-round quarterbacks to make this work, knowing where the sweet spots of the draft were. So to me, it was like I basically knew which position I was taking in virtually every round. I think sometimes the picks you regret is when the board could go either way. And you're like, well, I could go running back here. I could go wide receiver. And then you're like, man, I don't like the 2v2 on that. I wish I would have gone the other way, wide receiver here, running back here. This draft, running back was off the board. I essentially removed a position from my choices for the rest of the draft. And so that meant I didn't actually regret stuff quite as much, other than how I started. There were a few places where I did want to prioritize some of my portfolio. Tyler Lockett has been a guy I've wanted to select more. I did the video previously on the Deposit Kingdom where I compared those ranking sets, and Tyler Lockett was the one guy that ETR, Legendary Upside, and RotoViz were all higher than market on. And to me, that's a screaming buy signal. Hey, if these 3 independent rankers like this guy more than the market, that should be a guy you're targeting. And so Tyler Lockett fit into that. But for the most part, I was just trying to hold on for dear life. I was just trying to get the positional requirements I needed to make this work. I didn't have the luxury to think about portfolio as much as I otherwise would. The reason this took me outside my comfort zone is because I do think the board has shook out in a way where 0 RB is optimal. You can go look at the sweet spots of the draft and it's like, holy cow, all the best picks in the first 3 to 4 rounds are essentially wide receivers. And then guess what? There's all these great tight end values in rounds 5 and 6. And then you wake up in round 7, 8, and 9, and it's just a gold mine of 0 RB targets. There's Tony Pollard, there's Jalen Warren, Najee Harris, David Montgomery, Brian Robinson. Like, it's almost like drafters have colluded to say, let's all draft 0 RB. We'll order the players this way. And if you color outside those lines, we will make you pay. When I sacrificed ADP value early, right? Where I took Josh Jacobs a round ahead of ADP. I took Joe Mixon a round ahead of ADP. I'm looking to claw that value back. Michael Leone has shown that ADP value is an indicator of top percentile teams. The more ADP value you get, the stronger your team will be. And so when I was able to get Jamison Williams, 16 picks past ADP, and then Jared Goff 10 picks past ADP, even though those slides aren't as impactful as they are in reaching in rounds 2 and 4, like those movements are far more impactful, it still felt like, hey, I'm able to kind of claw back and get a slightly better team than the one I sacrificed at the top. I didn't really think about needing to get unique in this draft because I already got unique by starting with 4 straight running backs. Most drafters are not doing that. I mean, I bet right now, if you pulled the data, and there's hundreds of thousands of teams in this contest, I bet there's not a single other team that started Breece Hall, Josh Jacobs, Derrick Henry, Joe Mixon. I'm sure there's a few other RB by 4 teams, but I bet they're few and far between. Not only because people have moved away from taking running backs early, but because the ADP doesn't even line up to do it. You would have to reach to make this happen. So if people don't want to take running backs and they don't want to reach, you're never going to end up with a team like this. So to me, I do think sometimes about uniqueness stuff. I know that this team was already infinitely unique, probably the most unique team in the entire contest.